final weekend in the GT4 European Series, powered by Rafa Racing Club, brings another huge entry to sunny Barcelona. Qualifying about to get underway, 2 sessions back-to-back, and race 1 at the end of today, race 2 tomorrow. Already we have champions within Pro-Am, where Christophe Amon and Greg Gilbert were victorious at Hockenheim, and in Am, with 8 wins out of the 10 races, Alban Baruti has already taken the title. But silver is up for grabs. 4 different combinations of driver could win that. It's going to be fascinating to see how they get on in qualifying, never mind how they get on in the race. In terms of Pro-Am, Greg Gilbert and Christophe Amon dominant ahead of Antoine Leclerc, who's had a variety of co-drivers, but he might not be good for second after this weekend, because only 2 points back, Henrik Still and Max Kronberg, who were winners at Hockenheim in the 2 races they won both. In fact, 1 win was an overall victory as well. They had a great weekend there. Loic Villiger, who did the early part of the season with Leclerc, comes next in the Pro-Am Championship. David Addison and Ben Constanduros trackside, and Ben, a huge entry pouring its way down the pit lane, which includes this really tight battle in silver.
Yeah, absolutely. 3 separate teams realistically can take victory. There is a 4th with Etienne Shelley and Antoine Potti mathematically able to do it as well. It'll be fascinating to see, because it's also different brands of cars. And whilst we've seen across the season different cars preferring different layouts, last time out, for instance, the Porsche's doing so well at home, here it doesn't seem to be so clear-cut.
No, on the evidence of yesterday's free practice and pre-qualifying, no one brand really seems to have the advantage. But part of this, of course, also will depend on who is going to be behind the wheel. We know from some of those driver combinations, one might be quicker than the other. Overall race wins, well, at Monza it was Audi and BMW. Benjamin Lariche won the first with Robert Consonny. Michael Schrei and Gabriele Piana won the second. At Paul Ricard, it was Victor Weyrich and Constantin Lachner victorious in the Aston Martin. Constantin Lachner having backed away from the championship mid-season. Second race for Toyota, Antoine Potti and Etienne Shelley. Then at Spa, we have BMW victory, Benjamin Lessin, Ricardo van der Ende, another Toyota win, Potti and Shelley. At Misano, 2 BMW wins, the first Michael Schrei and Gabriele Piana, once again the second Berke Besler and Tom Edgar. And then it was all Porsche at Hockenheim, wasn't it? Henrik Still and Max Kronberg from Pro-Am winning outright in race 1, Alex Hartwig and Nathan Sharp winning in the second. So there's been a spread of different winners, certainly in silver. And as the teams get set, it shows you how busy the pit lane's going to be.
Yeah, 43 cars on the entry list. We've still got 43 cars expected to make the start. Most races we go to, we have an entry list of 1 thing, and by the time we get to qualifying, we lose 1 or 2. They've actually had a huge amount of track time, because they had a 4-hour test session on Thursday, followed by their free practice session, and now what we call the pre-qualifying session yesterday. And finally, we go into more meaningful sessions today with qualifying. But they should be, especially this being a circuit where you can come testing, and for quite a few of these teams also, NM Racing, for instance, based locally, they will know exactly what they need to do. It's a different layout from last year, of course. Let's not forget, we take on what Formula 1 have been doing, and therefore do not have the chicane at the end of the lap. A much more flowing circuit. But the conditions are about the same as well. It was hot, hot, hot on Thursday. It's about the same today. We saw the weather graphic come up a little bit earlier, 32.5 degrees already. And so they know what they're expecting.
Now, you were here a couple of weeks ago for the 24-hour series event. Do any of these teams do that, and therefore were their teams here 2 weeks ago getting some knowledge and experience?
Not in terms of actual team and driver lineups. We have seen a couple of the drivers in this gaining experience in that series. Right. You know, you get a huge amount of track time when you do a 24-hour race, so you do tend to see drivers from GT4 experiencing GT3 cars before they then come back over here and race in GT3. We do have a couple of different cars out there on the grid. We've seen the Backmans throughout the season this year, but there are, as we have throughout the season, invited teams and teams that have come from, say, the German Championship over here. Second in the German Championship is Eastside Motorsport with Dennis Bulatov, for instance, and he's making his debut, certainly as far as I can work out, in this European Championship. So watch out for the Mercedes, which is kind of green in colour. NM Racing, usually 2 entries, 3 entries this weekend.
Yeah, Dennis Bulletov we've seen in GT3 in the past, haven't we, as well? So he's a pretty experienced campaigner. Now, the 2 qualifying sessions are 20 minutes in duration. This first one is the grid for race 1. The driver behind the wheel will be the start driver for race 1, and therefore it stands to reason that for the second session, which will be for race 2, the driver in the car will be the start driver for race 2. So isolated qualifying. The only slight difference to the second grid is if anybody gets a grid drop for a penalty incurred in race 1, for example, that needs to be put into the mix. But the pit lane is emptying. 20 minutes on a long lap like this, nearly 5K long, you're not going to get that many laps in, and clearly drivers are eager to time it right. There's one late arrival as well, because there is a Cayman that has just sneaked out of the assembly area into the pit lane. So one is a bit late on parade.
I think that's one of the Alpines from
is it?
Chazelle Technology, which is the team, French team,
Sorry, you're quite right,
that have won the Alpine Europa Cup here 2 weeks ago. Right. So they were here as part of that one make series. It's not a GT4 car that they use in the Europa Cup, but it is very similar and obviously based on the same Alpine machine. So they've come and just brought their French national GT4 team here to experience Barcelona once more, and obviously a little bit late to the party.
Just had a look at the Dante Rapponge-driven Chevrolet that went really well at Hockenheim. They were pretty unlucky, actually, with penalties and incidents over the course of the weekend, but the pace was very, very good indeed.
New teammate this weekend for Dante Rapponge.
Yes, Lars Zeinen, the Belgian driver, takes charge, doesn't he?
I've been trying to get to the bottom of where Konstantin Lachnauer has disappeared to, because he's been a stable, really, of that team at Racing Spirit of Le Mans. But there wasn't really a very clear story as to why he's parted with the team and no longer partnering Victor Weyrich. They obviously had a championship victory earlier on in the season, and Konstantin Lachnauer has been studying law for the last couple of years, so it might be that he's just got to a point where it's intensifying and he needed to concentrate on law studies. The other one that has gone missing, who has been part of the championship for a few years, Loic Villigier, a partner with Antoine Leclerc, and the reason for that was that basically he got too good.
Yes, he got upgraded.
Yeah, he got upgraded. Well, he didn't want to be upgraded.
That's right.
And so they were giving him penalties, and each race was getting heavier and heavier penalties to a point where it was kind of pointless for him starting, because he had 25-second penalty going into Hockenheim, and so unfortunately has decided to stop. But interestingly, he had to be replaced by a bronze driver, and so Code Racing Developments had to find themselves a bronze driver that was fast to partner Antoine Leclerc, and they found Jean-Bernard Beauvais, who once was a GT3 champion and has multiple Le Mans starts to his name. So it's one of those bronze drivers that actually is very, very quick, but bronze because of his age rather than experience.
Yes, and that now, oddly, I remember a GT3 team owner telling me this a few years ago. You used to go and hunt for the bronze with the biggest wallet. Now you hunt for the bronze with the biggest ability, and actually you're almost paying them to drive rather than them paying for a drive. You want a bronze gun driver, ideally, somebody who's quick and young and hasn't yet crept up the ranks of the driver grading. Right, others biding their time in the pit lane. It's a very, very calm start to the session, this, isn't it?
I think it's because of the temperature, and we know that the tyre can't do that many laps. That's Alex Fontana we're looking at, who was last year, if you remember, teammate to Ivan Giacomo in a single Centrino Porsche Ticino entered Cayman. Now they have two, and Ivan Giacomo with his full season teammate Nicolas Leutfeller, and Alex Fontana partners Patrick Hoffman. They were here last weekend, 2 weekends ago, all four of them driving a 992, I think it was, in the 24H series, so getting experience around the circuit.
And they're also doing the GT3 race this weekend, and Nicky Leutwiler brought out a red flag earlier on in the day by putting his Porsche in the gravel yonder at turn 13. This is about to be a decent lap, I think, from number 13 Porsche, which is somebody new to the championship, the Bulgarian bronze driver Ivailo Zvonev, and he will go quickest of all, Zvonev, with a 153.327. Not saying that's going to stay, but it's not a bad debut to be quick out of the box.
I don't know whether there's much point in necessarily waiting for later on in the session. Only that you might not have as many cars out on circuit to worry about traffic. But I don't think the circuit's going to develop like you might see in Formula One. You can see how almost light grey the tarmac is from being bleached here over the years. It's not what you would expect. You know, a new road these days built in Europe is black almost, but over time with the sun gets bleached.
Yes.
And Barcelona here could be 40 plus degrees in the height of summer. 32 feels good enough for me today. It really is very, very hot. Track temperature actually only 35 degrees because it is early on in the day. You'd expect that to go up.
This long pit straight lending itself to the Chevrolet. Dante Raponge goes fastest, 1:49.4. It's early days, but a margin of 4.5 seconds was the gap. It's instantly come down because Laurent Stegman goes second, and he's only 0.6 of a second shy of the V8 Racing Chevrolet. So Dante Raponge, as we've been saying, with a new co-driver, Kenny Herriman's not part of the crew for this weekend, but he normally is quick, so it's a shame that there's been a parting of the ways there.
Now we've got to be careful of track limits. They are monitoring track limits at 5 different points around the session, and car 18's lap time cancelled. So Dante Raponge has to go again because 17 was also cancelled, and car 13's. We've lost 4 lap times. It's very annoying, isn't it, to follow the lap and watch, and then as soon as the car goes over, all 4 wheels over the white line, they'll come across the line, we get all excited because it's the fastest lap time, and then it disappears. And that's what's happened to both car 17 and car 18. So that's Dante Raponge, and 18 was someone else.
Laurent Stegman.
Yes.
Paul Cowpay has just gone quicker ahead of Laurent Hergon, so it's Alpine 1-2. And then as you look at Dante Raponge doing an absolute best in the first sector, it is number 2 BMW 4th fastest now, because Andreas Beckmann has gone up to 2nd fastest, but Michael Schrei is at the wheel of the Bonk Motorsport BMW, the silver and blue BM, and that leading silver in the championship is 4th in the times. This, barring any track limit dramas for Raponge, is looking good. 2 purples.
It's turn 13, which is right at the end of the lap, which is where they're monitoring or losing their times.
And it's that corner.
Interestingly, they are monitoring at 5 points, as I said, but it's only 1 which is being having any kind of effect on the lap times.
So this should be pole position, we reckon, for Dante Raponge. He goes second, in fact. So the lap time is a 1:49.190. Where did he lose out? It was
being careful in the final sector.
Yeah, possibly, and also his middle was fractionally down. But Cowpay the quickest then, from Raponge, from Laurent Hergon, Laurent Stegman is 4th. Benjamin Lariche now up to 5th, and bearing in mind that Lariche is running as part of that silver championship fight. He's in the mix now.
Fastest of all is a returnee to the championship. Jim Pla and Jean-Luc Bobelik have joined us again, not in the Mercedes for ACA ASP, as we've so used to seeing them last year, but they're in Team Speed Cars Audi this weekend. We've seen Jean-Luc Bobelik in GT2 racing this year.
Winning?
Winning.
Yes.
But I haven't seen him in GT4, so jumping all over the place. Obviously an opportunity to fill the 83 car that's actually had a few different lineups across the year. And Jean-Luc Bobelik, who's based in Limoges in the centre of France, has a building construction company there, has brought a company actually that was formed by his father in the early 50s. But Jim Pla aboard the car for this first session and pole by 1.5 tenths.
Keep an eye there on number 2 BMW because it is being elbowed back down the order. That's going through 2nd fastest now. Paul Cowpay in the Alpine. He's another quick ex-Formula 4 racer and should be on for a good time, I would have thought, traffic allowing on this next lap. But Michael Schrei's BMW is only 5th and needs to be ahead of the championship rivals. We'll pick up number 2 BMW, no doubt, in due course. And also have a look at Tom Edgar in number 12 BMW. He's another one in that title mix. So you've got the race going on with a whole raft of winners, and the championship dependent on who the guns are in that. Josh Rattigan in the Elite Motorsport McLaren here, looking for pole position, Ben.
He was fastest in our pre-qualifying session, so if we didn't have a qualifying, he would have taken pole, but at the moment he's provisionally on pole in the McLaren. So it's great to see Elite Motorsport really getting on top of that machine and proving that it wasn't a fluke or some kind of trickery in pre-qualifying. Of course, they were probably on a new set of tyres on the early part of the pre-qualifying session and then would have put those in the box and saved them and then run on old tyres for the rest of the session. That's why we didn't really see any times change after the first 5 or 10 minutes of pre-qualifying. It looks like Ratikin's time is staying then, because race control haven't announced it being deleted, and so that is great news. Teammate, 6th position as well. So McLaren, Audi, Lariche up to 3rd now, and then Alpine with Antoine Leclerc in the 36 up to 4th. We've got a bit of traffic here for Josh Radican. Remember, there's really only a couple of laps you're going to get on these tyres, so you don't want to be wasting time being stuck in traffic, and Radican bounces over the curbs. I'm sure he's going to have lost time there, as Lariche finds more time in his Audi, best of all in the first sector, and he's just behind, but he's got traffic there. Look at the back of shot, he's tucked up behind the Aston Martin, and that may well mean that middle sector's not as good. Josh Radican's middle sector's not either. No,
indeed. Josh, another driver that's come out of Ginetta Junior Racing, School of Hard Knocks, so he lacks nothing in terms of racecraft, that's for sure. And to outpace Jimmy Pla, that takes some doing, so good effort that, to be 0.166 of a second. Good Alfa Romeo time ahead of Jim Pla. Fair play. Benjamin Lariche is 3rd, Leclerc 4th, Calpe 5th, Jack Mitchell, very versatile, if underfunded British driver. He is now 6th. We've seen Jack in everything from British GT to Chinese GT to Minis to British touring cars. You name it, he is 6th in the other elite McLaren. Dante Raporge is 7th, Jamie Day is 8th, Alex Fontana is 9th, Antoine Potti is 10th.
Now Lariche gets himself down the inside of the Alpine that's squirming under brakes. It's one of the Chazelle Technology Corsa Alpines that we mentioned. Here's another one, very attractive livery on the Autosport GP machine. Now down to 5th position, Paul Cowell. Has he got pace to improve though? Because it was a couple of laps ago where he'd set that really good time, and actually I think the first attempt was good too, so it'd be surprising if he's got any more left in these tyres to be able to improve.
I'm still getting concerned about number 2 BMW, because Schrei is 14th now, so the Silver Championship leader is only 14th.
And in the pits.
Yeah, indeed. Only just come in as well.
So is that in the pits, change pressures and go back out again, or is that in the pits, I can't go any faster? We have a couple of cars. Antoine Leclerc is in the pits, I can see from the commentary position. And so there are a few people who've called it a day, but there are also a few that have come in and gone back out again. So with that, they are trying to keep the tyre pressure in the window. They'll do a fast lap, they'll come in, they'll then tweak the tyre pressure and go back out again to try and have a second attempt in a tyre pressure window that works.
You get a point for pole position in each class as well, and at this point of the season, I would think it's important to try and go after that. So, not necessarily saying Michael Schrei could do it, he's not as quick as Gabriele Piana, but he certainly could be higher, should be higher than 16th on the grid. So, number 2 BMW, when we check in on that car, we'll monitor the progress, but the session is
where's number 12?
28th, 29th now, Tom Edgar. Tom was saying to me last week that he's now started at King's College in London, and he said it's been a shock to the system, this student life. You know, he said, not eating now, you know, cost of living and all that. He said, I can't wait to go racing at Barcelona because there'll be hospitality and I can eat. He said, I don't know what my lap times are going to be like, because I'll either be so light after a week of not eating, I'll be much quicker, or I'll have overloaded hospitality and I'll be much heavier. So he wasn't sure which way it was going to go.
Not going well for BMW then here.
No, you're right.
Two of our championship contenders are BMWs, the Michael Schrei car and the Borissan Automotive machine. And then it's number 3 Speed car and number 8 Swift Racing Events. Now, where is the Potti Shelley machine?
12th. And the Speed car Audi is 4th.
So so it's really advantage Lariche and number 3.
Great noise from the Porsche. Alexander Hartvig, you're riding with, winner at Hockenheim last month. And he will do driving duties, obviously, in this session, and then give the car over to Nathan Sharp for Q2. There's a yellow flag out in the middle sector. Not seeing anything out of our window that would suggest an incident, and it's now gone green again, so somebody having a brief moment, and then the road getting clear.
Quite a few cars already in the pits and calling it a day. Over the line, 6th position, so a slight improvement for Hartvig.
Now there, an empty BMW, so Michael Schrei surprisingly has called it a day. Second generation racer. His father Wolfgang Schrei was a very successful Porsche racer in the 1990s in what was then the Ferrari Porsche Challenge, and was successful both under his real name and a pseudonym, because he had a problem with an eye and wanted to carry on racing, but because the governing body knew that he had this eye issue, he couldn't get a license under that name. So in a rather depressed state, he went off to Spain for a holiday, got himself a bottle of San Miguel, stared at the mountain and thought, that's it. And he came back as Miguel Monti and carried on winning. And on the podium at Donington, when he was successful and he was introduced as Wolfgang Schrei, he very grumpily said, Miguel Monti, and was absolutely adamant that nobody should know. I may have blown the gaff. Number 67 Audi, in the meantime, is Paul Petit at the wheel, but only 22nd. That's normally a quick car.
New engine for that car. As we walked out the paddock last night, it didn't have an engine in it.
That's right.
And they had one of two cars to have a hardship lap this morning, with major repairs being done to various cars overnight, and so just an opportunity to shake down the car this morning, and that was one. So a new engine for the 67, and it was a new gearbox for, what was the car 93? Okay. New gearbox.
Do you remember at the start of the session I got all excited about Ivailo Tsonev, the Bulgarian newcomer, going fastest?
Yeah, he never got a lap in.
Well, he had the lap time taken off him for track limits, and he hasn't got one to his name.
Yeah.
So he's gone out, and he needs to hurry up. Number 4 there is Marco Fulgencio with his charismatically coloured Mercedes, which is only 20th fastest, and he's bailed from that lap as well. And Q1 has got 3 minutes to go.
Yeah, that's another car that we see in the German Championship in GT4 Germany.
Yeah.
In the hands of Marco Fulgencio, and comes in. So there's not going to be very, very many cars out there on circuit that can still improve on a lap time. We still have time to do it. 2 minutes and 40 seconds. But yes, BMW not looking particularly strong. Potty improved his lap time up to 6th, so actually now just sits 2 positions behind Benjamin Lariche. But it's Lariche, so Lariche is 25 points back from Schrei and Piana, and Potty is 37 back. So, okay, you know, everyone really needs big weekends versus the number 2 to still win that Silver Cup. But by the looks of the performance of the BMWs, it's possible, isn't it? Well,
yeah, and the BM struggled at Hockenheim as well, so they've perhaps had a sort of good start, but a bad end to the season under the BOP. You're looking here at Bailey Voisin, who was an improver last time. He was the silver champion a couple of years ago, and he shared with Charlie Fagg. And Bailey has struggled really to match those results ever since. He's in the GPA run Aston Martin, and the GPA team this weekend. There was talk at one point of the team owner David Pouget driving, but he's fallen off the entry list again.
It's smoking as well.
Yeah.
Left rear corner. I was wondering whether it was tyre rub, but actually it doesn't look like tyre rub to me, and that's a little bit of a worry for GPA. There is Benjamin Lariche,
who doesn't look like your archetypal racing driver in a sense, but he's very, very quick. And does a great job in that Audi. He was talking to Jim Plough amongst others. In super slow-mo here, the Aston Martin's giving the suspension and a curb and the tyres a good workover. There you go, launch yourself over it.
So I hadn't actually put that 2 and 2 together there. We've got McLaren 1st and 3rd for Elite Motorsport, yeah, and then Audi for Speed Car in 2nd and 4th. So Jim Plough 2nd on the grid, and Benjamin Lariche 4th. So 2 teams, not brands, really dominating over the rest.
Now, is that 83 Audi, Jim Plough at the wheel for this session, but think for the race, is that the sacrificial lamb? As in, can that car get out of the way? Can it be told to get out of the way of number 3 and let it by? And equally, can it then defend from the championship rivals? It isn't a factor in the championship if I'm speculating, Speed Car just happened to have a few euros lying around and said to Jean-Luc Bobling, why don't you come and have a weekend, bit of fun, you know, bring Jim. Jim's a good man, bring Jim. And you could drive around. We could do with being ahead of that BM and that Toyota and that other BMW, but, you know, come and enjoy yourself. Bring Jim, come and enjoy yourself. I just wonder whether this is the championship
It's difficult, though, isn't it? It's difficult to do that with gentleman drivers because they all have their own... you don't have a 2-car team, effectively. You're running 2 cars, but you don't have a 2-car team to really manipulate one across to the other because everyone is paying their fair share.
One assumes that yes, unless it's
one assumes that they are. Yes, of course.
Flag is out. You're looking at 93, which is Ricardo Dort in the Sorg Rennsport Porsche. and he's only 33rd at the moment and not going to improve on this lap. Actually, it's a remarkably quiet end of the session. I think we've got something like 6 or 7 cars only still circulating.
No, it's because it's too hot, because
It's true.
it literally can't. They want to save these tyres as well. They need to. They can put these fast laps on them, but they don't want to take all the life out of them. Sonev has taken the checkered flag, by the way, just ahead of Dort. He did get a lap in, but unfortunately it ended up being 5 seconds off the pace and 2 seconds off the nearest competitor. So must be in a late entry, actually, because the press release said 43 cars, and we've just had 44 qualify.
Okay.
So then we must have had a late car onto the entry list.
Yeah, MC Overdrive Racing is a Bulgarian team. This is it. This is the Ivailo Tsonev and Joachim Bolting car. Bolting we've seen in the championship before, but not the team, not Tsonev. And his last lap's been taken off him as well.
Well, it's not going to change his position, is it? Because he's going
to be last.
He was last with his lap time anyway.
The other one that had a time taken away was Lauren Stegman, who was quick early on, but for obvious reasons now. Great shot from the drone there, chasing the cars out of turn 5.
Stegman's down in 42nd position.
Yes, and Tom Edgar is down in 36th.
Oh.
And of course he's fighting for a championship, so that is not terribly good news.
Yeah, and Edgar had a lap time disallowed as well. All on track limits at 13, a few at turn 3, which is the long right-hander where you can just understeer off the circuit. I'm pretty sure it doesn't give you any benefit other than if you open the wheel and do it purposefully. But yes, Tom Edgar has a huge amount of work to do championship-wise from 36 to this afternoon from that.
Yeah, indeed. So we've got about 10 minutes before Q2 gets underway. If I were a BMW team, I'd be up to race control to talk to Claude Sermon, who is the technical maestro, GT3, GT4, pleading my case about the BOP, because that's evidence. Where's the best BMW? 17th. Next BMW, 21st, and then 36th. We haven't got many BMs, and that's where the 3 of them are. They're really struggling.
However, a BMW has taken 3 victories across the season so far.
Indeed, and that's why I was suggesting, the BOP kinder at some than others. Well, this is how we look at the moment, with Josh Rattigan taking top spot by 1/10 of a second from Jim Pla and then Jack Mitchell. So McLaren 1-3, Audi 2-4, with Benjamin Lariche ahead of the Alpine of Antoine Leclerc, the Toyota of Antoine Potti, then Alexander Hartwig's Porsche, Paul Carapace's Alpine, Jamie Day's Aston, and Henrik Still's Porsche rounding out the top 10. 11th, Dante Raponge ahead of Alex Fontana and Christophe Amont, with Tawerish next from Denis Bulletov, then Laurent Hergon down to 17th, Mikhail Schrei from Bailey Voisin, Andreas Bachmann and Marc de Fulgencio is next. Outside the top 20, Enzo Juliet ahead of Igor Ekelchik. Paul Petit only 23rd from Davide Meloni and Oscar Christensen. Cyril Salai is 26th. Then Valentin Asclo a long way back. Very rapid driver is Valentin. Dakota Dickerson, the American, is ahead of Akil Rabindra and Stefan Bostangiev. Then you've got Gustavo Zabier, who was 31st ahead of Alexandra Papadopoulos, a long way back also for NM Racing, the local team. Ricardo Dort outpaced Philip Barber, Ivan Jacome at 35th, ahead of Tom Edgar, 36th from Stanislav Safronov, then Stefan Perusuti. Kevin Jimenez, Clio Cup graduate, only 39th, and Julian Piguet a long way back, just ahead in turn of the Chazelle technology entry of Jean-Paul Dominici. Next, Laurent Stegman from Alessandro Lagrange, and then the Porsche of Ivailo Tsonev. This is how we look then within the first part of qualifying. Cars pouring out on track, and Tsonev was the first to record a time, so he had his moment at the top of the timing sheets, but he spent most of it at the bottom.
First out and the last to come back, and nothing to show for it, sadly. All the lap times disallowed. But Motorsport GP looking pretty strong in the Alpine, right at the sharp end with Paul Cahoop, and Hartweg was also there and thereabouts. One of the only Porsches really to show. Benjamin Lariche fighting for the championship and up on the second row of the grid eventually, but it has been a very strong day so far for Elite Motorsport and their McLarens.
Very true indeed. Now, of course, same cars, but different drivers. So the interest now is going to be in terms of the relative pace and what this is going to do, and are we going to see the BMWs go any faster? Well, it's going to be a tough call, that, but we'll find out very shortly as the drivers then get set for this second session. We're about 5 minutes or so away from that kicking off. Nicky Leutweiler in a sense, he's putting himself through it here. He's one of the more mature drivers on the grid, but having to leap from a GT3 to a GT4 car, and they will feel very, very different, won't they?
Absolutely. GT3 reliant much more on aerodynamics to push the car to the ground. These GT4 cars far less aerodynamically efficient, therefore they move around a lot more. You're asking more of the tyres for mechanical grip, and also you're trying to keep momentum because they're not as powerful as a GT3 car. Weirdly, then, if you move to GT2, you have a kind of a combination of the GT4 characteristic of the car moving around, but the power of a GT3, because actually a GT2 car is more powerful than GT3, but has far less aero. So even though they're seemingly in the same family, three very different types of car to race.
So there is the Chevrolet making its way noisily down the pit lane now with Lars Zeinen at the wheel of it. New to the championship, Etienne Shelley about to get on board the Toyota Supra, run by Swift Racing Events. New team, they've done a good job, 2 wins with that car.
Yeah, I wonder whether it is a new team or whether it's a kind of a renamed team from what they've run under the last couple of years. Swift Racing Events is effectively an events company where you can hire out Formula 1 cars and go racing and things
but
like
CMR, which was the team, still exists and still runs cars under that name.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it could be a satellite team, granted, yes, but either way, they've done a good job. But they've been not win or bust, but they have had days where they've been really short of luck, that's for certain.
And that's the car that was champion, was it 2 years ago?
Yeah, but then they had a big accident with it in the test at Misano, and they had to get a spare car overnight, and it really wasn't a good weekend, but it was a damage limitation weekend, but they were coming out of the pit lane. If you think about Misano, it has that long pit exit, and it sort of feeds back in on the exit of turn 3 after that first wriggle. Somebody got it wrong through turns 1 and 2 and careered backwards into the pit lane as they were leaving, wiped the car out completely. So they were totally innocent of anything. They were in the pit lane, leaving the pit lane, somebody spun into them, and it did so much damage that they had to get this replacement car.
Bucky Bessler now aboard the car that was in the hands of Tom Edgar, and 36th for Q1. So this is now qualifying for our second race, which will be Sunday. And clean sheet, different drivers, and an opportunity to right the wrongs of Q1. When it comes to the BMWs, there's some work to do.
Yeah, there's a lot of writing there, but I'm not quite sure that they can do it in just 10 minutes between the sessions. It's not going to be easy to do that, I wouldn't have thought.
Third car for WNS, usually running 2 cars in GT4, but they've got an American collection of drivers there in their third entry this weekend.
That's the now Gabriele Piano-driven BMW. He is normally a little bit quicker than Michael Schreib, so 1-to-1. I still think that car looks great in that colour scheme. It really works.
German GT4 champions last year. They came as an invitational entry for a couple of races last year. We didn't see them do the full season. So to jump from GT4 Germany and be leading this championship shows just how strong both the German series is and them as a partnership.
We kind of had 2 in Germany. It happened to be DTM Trophy, which runs for GT4 cars in all but name, and then the Pucker GT4 Championship as well, looking at more different brands. There are the McLarens from Elite Motorsport, so now Tom Ensign takes over Josh Rattigan's car, Alex Denning takes over from Jack Mitchell. And a very crowded house with 1 minute before the pit lane opens to send them back into battle.
No rush again, because there is a 20-minute session and we don't need 20 minutes to get a lap time in. It's almost too long. Track temperature, according to the data, has dropped to 21 degrees. So somebody's moved the sensor into the shadow, I think. Because, of course, track temperature relates to a single tiny point on the circuit. It doesn't relate to the whole circuit itself. And I reckon that sensor is now in the shadow. Because dropping that much is kind of impossible. 4.6 kilometres in length, the Barcelona circuit this year after the modifications of chicane, one of which is the start-finishing straight, over a kilometre long.
And it goes on, and on, and on. And of course, it's absolutely great for cars with a lot of grunt, or for cars with good aero. And certainly when you get to a stint rather than just one flying lap, it really does count. Right, green light goes on at the end of the pit lane, and the white Borusan BMW was the first one out. That's the Jagish Gedich driven car.
I like how they've done that. It was a mistake, wasn't it? Or not a mistake, but it was a coincidence that they had a big shunt when they used to have 2 turquoisey blue machines.
Yes.
And they had a big shunt and had to get a new car overnight. And so BMW had a spare chassis, but of course they didn't have any time to paint it. And since then, it's just stayed white.
Yes.
They've never painted it.
It works.
Yeah.
So now you know which is which. Yes.
Now we know which is which.
Yeah. I think it was Spa, wasn't it? They did that mid-season. So yeah, lots of the teams, and we saw this in Q1 really, being quite content to bide their time and just send the car out for one run.
Just got to be careful that you don't run off circuit and lose a lap time, because you've only got a couple of opportunities. And as we saw with Tom Edgar, with many a driver in Q1, losing a lap time when you've only got a couple of chances is very, very significant. There's a 74 machine. 74 because that's the postcode, or the region, the number of the region in Haute-Savoie where the team is based in sur Foran. Spirit of Le Mans, we've explained it a few times. Not Le Mans as in the medieval village that hosts a 24-hour race, but the lake, which is otherwise known as Lake Geneva if you're Swiss. Lake Le Mans if you're French.
Well, I didn't know that.
And of course, the lake sits in both France and Switzerland. So you can cross the border if you're on a boat. And you can... there's some cars on track. No, stop talking about boats, and let's watch the 83 of Jean-Luc Bobolic, who's back in the championship, but driving an Audi.
Yes, back to motor racing.
I don't know how often he's been in an Audi.
Who, sorry?
Jean-Luc Bobolic. He's always Mercedes, really, from what I remember.
Well, we'll see how he fares. And as you were making the point earlier, he's not part of the championship regular contingent, so he's here for a bit of fun. And possibly to help for the championship. 78 good to go, and the elite McLaren Alex Denning with the Artura. Lots of McLarens here because we've got the GT4 and also McLaren Trophy trim this weekend. So Jagish Gedic, he's in a hurry. It's going to be interesting to see what he and Piana can do relative to their co-drivers. I'm not suggesting that the co-drivers are slow, but you know the pressure is on now. They've got to deliver. Certainly Piana has high expectations because he has been very, very successful, whether it's been in GT4, whether it's been in the VLN or the NLS as it now is. He's a real gun around the Nordschleife. Other cars ready to be sent out. Gradually the road is getting busier, to the detriment really of those that went out early, because they're going to start a flying lap and encounter cars that are on a start-up lap.
Cars in the pits as well. 4 cars have gone out and come back in. It's actually a characteristic that we've seen from Porsche all season, isn't it?
Yeah.
And again, it's the 4 Porsches that have done a lap, and they come back into the pits. They then tweak the tyre pressure settings and go back out again. And I don't know why it is unique to the Porsche teams that they do it. We might go and have a chat, I think, with Porsche Ticino, I should say. And find out why they do that, because no other brand does it, but all season Porsche have.
Now the Chevrolet looking good, and so Lars Zaynen, new to the championship, but with a good first sector. An absolute and a personal, with respect, means very little at the moment because so few cars have actually done a lap. But it is interesting to see what it all pans out to be and whether he keeps hold of that purple. Simon Thurman has now gone quicker than anybody in the middle in the Alpine that's chasing after him. So as he comes now up towards the timing line, the grunt and go Camaro turns in, turn 14, very, very quick corner now that the chicane has gone. And the Alpine using a bit more of the curb, still legit with the wheel in contact with the tarmac. So Lars Zaynen goes quickest, but for how long? 151.0, and Simon Thurman is a 151.1 behind him.
Yeah, Jean-Luc Bobolic was the second car out onto track, had his lap time deleted, and is now back in the pits. So interestingly that Speed Car doing that with him. Gregor Faisal is also doing the same thing. So Bobolic maybe not happy with the car in his trim. He'll be going back out to try and get a lap.
I wonder how much time he spent, if at all, with any testing. As you've been saying, he's become a Mercedes specialist. It must be a very, very different feel. And although he would have had the track time yesterday, same also for Jim Ply. You know, he's become a Mercedes specialist over the years. Must have got a different feel. 21 is under investigation. This is the Chazelle Alpine of Jean-Mathieu Leandri, and it's for a pit lane infringement, which might be being released too soon, or it might be for speeding, or it might be for something else like not too many people being in the fast lane at the wrong time. You know, there are all sorts of things.
And there's so many little rules that are unique to every championship. They're a highly experienced team in French GT4 and the Europa Cup, which have slightly different rules again, and so they're coming new to this championship, and it's so easy to do just that little thing wrong and get themselves under investigation and in trouble.
It's understanding all the nuances, isn't it? As Simon Thurman now is on for a really good lap time here, because he's done 2 absolute best. He's sort of being dragged through the air, isn't he, by that huge brick-like Chevrolet that punches a massive hole in the air, and the rather more aero-friendly Alpine sort of scuttles through behind, and he's going to come up towards turn 4, looking for a way past, but the Chevrolet getting in the way. I mean, they're both quick, but Simon Thurman possibly being compromised there as they come up towards the line. Jagish Gedic has gone quickest, but now Thurman goes faster still on a 1:49.6, so he puts himself up to the top of the times for the moment, at least.
It could have been so much better, because Zainin had run wide at 13. I'm pretty sure he'll have that time disallowed in the Chevrolet Camaro. But that meant that Simon Thurman had to get out the throttle to avoid the slightly slower machine when you just want to keep it pinned. You know you can if there was nobody in front of you, but he wasn't able to do so and had to back out of it, and then had the door shut through the final turn as well.
So the Audi there goes through. Christophe Amon, yeah, the Pro-Am champion. So they can come here, go for a win, but without any pressure at all. Gabriele Piana, absolute best in the first sector, BMW number 2. So the championship leading in silver, BM now is quickest within the first sector, as there Amon presses on. So it's Thurman the quickest, Lundstrass second, Gabriele Piana a personal best in the middle. So the BMW then heading up towards turn 12 at the moment. I can see it out of the window. You're looking over at turn 4 at Christophe Amon. But number 2 BMW is going to be the one to watch. The drone chases down towards turn 5. One of those welcome downhill bits of the circuit. And Amon getting himself up through the traffic as the number 2 BMW is heading up towards the timing line. And Gabriele Piana now breaks the beam and goes quickest of all. So Gabriele Piana does a 1:49.407, fifth of a second up on Simon Thurman. That kind of brings the BMW back to the races. Gedic is 6th. We've not yet got a time out of the Paolo Meloni car, but we do out of Berke Besler. He's 16th, now 17th. 16th at the time, yes. So Piana going well. And an absolute best being offered up at the moment by the Audi of Robert Consony. So this is going to make tomorrow's race. I think today it'll be a case of gaining points, won't it? But it's all going to go down to the wire tomorrow. It's going to be a really interesting weekend for GT4, this.
Christophe Amon's really in a window where that's a disallowed lap straight away. Very, very clear from our camera position. That's a shame for Amon. But he's in a bit of a no man's land with his driver grading, because he's actually so strong as an AM. Miles stronger than most of the AMs around him, but probably if you put him in silver, he would be a little bit struggling. And so you kind of need an AM plus for him.
Absolutely, I was about to say that. Yeah, that's where he falls in a way, isn't it?
Same with Loic Villiger, who's obviously no longer with us. He had exactly the same issue.
As in he's withdrawn from the championship, not
yes,
in any other sense. Yes, I know what you mean. Right, explain this to me then. What's gone on in BMW land? Because right now they're 1 and 2. They were nowhere in Q1, and Piana and Besler are now first and second, split by 0.222 of a second. Robert Consony there goes through to be 4th, but the BMWs that I mean, okay, it's not the end of the session yet, we're not even at halfway, but the BMWs now looking a lot more competitive. Is this just down to different drivers? Is this down to something else?
One BMW has had its lap time deleted. The car 12, Berke Besler, drops down to 21st position. So that might be one of the reasons. It could also be, for some reason, they chose to use used tyres in Q1. I don't really know why you would do that, but such is the difference. I know you wouldn't expect this massive difference between 2 drivers knowing the championship so far.
Jagish Gedic is 8th times, and Berke Besler, who was 2nd, as Ben says, had his lap time taken off him, so he's got to go again. So it gives you BMW, Alpine, Audi, Aston Martin, Porsche, 5 different brands in the top 5.
Here is Berke Besler with a little Alpine in front. He's probably backing out of this lap. Yeah, he's slowing down. Try and get the tyres down, cooler a little bit, and then go another push lap. You've got 10 minutes. You're halfway through the session, so still plenty of opportunities as long as you haven't taken too much out of those tyres. still plenty of cars yet to set a lap. Where are our McLarens other than being stuffed up in traffic? Oh wow, Tomlinson just goes fastest. So McLaren having a great weekend. 58 thousandths of a second he is quicker. And Alex Denning here, 2 purples, and he's absolutely stuck because he's going to have to back out of the lap. That is a real shame. That should have been pole. And the traffic doing him no favours. One of the speed cars come up behind him but doesn't get too affected. I wonder if that's Robert Constantini. May well have been. Where is Jean-Luc Boblic? He is back out on circuit and he is in the same sector of the lap, so it could have been either of the 2 very distinctive speed car entries.
The lap time has been taken away from McLaren 77. So that was Tom Ensign, wasn't it? So that puts Piana back to the top. So not a good lap in either sense for McLaren. One getting a time that was disallowed, one missing out on the time because of traffic. 9 minutes to go.
Still, Denning's going to have traffic to contend with, although you would expect that speed car entry to disappear. That track limits are being monitored through turn 3 as well. If you open the steering and let the car run too wide, you can be pinged there at turn 3. We saw a few cars being pinged. No monitoring down here at turn 5, which is another place you traditionally would run all of the curb on the exit. And look how close now Alex Denning has got to the Audi. So that's okay. It's not okay in terms of FIA regulations, but there is no cameras monitoring that position, so he can get away with it. And there are certain corners, of course, that are, in a way, self-policing, because if you run wider than you should, you're in the gravel anyway. So that just costs you a fraction of time. So, yeah, you might exceed the track limits, but actually you don't need to monitor that because it self-polices itself. The drivers are avoiding it because they do not want to drop into the gravel and lose time. Alban Varuti, talk about AM pluses, there's another one because he's dominated the AM competition. On his own? Yeah. Most of the season. A number of races, you're quite right, he's won on his own, some with Julien Piguet, but he's up to 6th fastest now. Beke Besler is 3rd, so that's a lap he wants to try and keep, obviously. But Beke Besler back up into the pointy end of the grid. This is Taylor Hagler, the American in the Porsche Cayman, chasing after the pole-sitting Piana. Yeah, Varuti's brought that car into the pits now, so he's either going to do a tyre pressure change and try one last time to go back out on circuit, but with 7.5 minutes remaining, he'd have to really nail it. He's not only has he won that championship, he's won that championship. Whoops. Oh, what's going on here? Blue flags.
That was Piana backing off, wasn't it? And he was slightly caught out of the Porsche.
Almost, the Porsche almost jumped on the brakes like it was a yellow flag situation, wasn't it?
Yes.
Very odd.
Came across that slowing car. Yeah, sorry.
Back to Varuti. He's won that AM championship but on his own because Julien Piguet usually not there. And so he slides, and he almost was going to slide into the side of the BMW, I think. That's why he just jumped on the anchors. But Varuti has beaten the Fuerte and Hergon car, which is this one here, number 55. Which is remarkable, knowing how experienced both of those 2 drivers are. Those 2 are both AMs through dint of age rather than experience. And Varuti has cleaned up over them across the course of the season. Here's Luc Ibanez in the NM Racing machine that is based just around the corner in Montmello. And another of the teams and drivers that has done 24 hours of racing here just 2 weeks ago.
So Luc Ibanez, who's gone through different co-drivers over the seasons, 15th at the moment. Now up to 2nd has gone Hockenheim winner Nathan Schaap, the Dutch driver. So Porsche up to 2nd. It's BMW, Porsche, Alpine, BMW, and then Audi. Robert Constantini, in quotes, only 5th at the moment.
Well, both laps have been held, so Piana is provisional pole, and it does look as though he's now in the pits, so it is not being cancelled by race control. Beke Besler's lap for 4th position also still stands. So as you say, a much better second session for BMW than we've seen in the first session. I'd love to, I don't know if we're getting any interviews from pit lane, but I'd love to know why, because it just seems as though Q1 there was a massive problem with the BMW cars, and Q2 it seems to have resolved itself.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit unfair to say, ergo, these are the faster drivers, but in a sense, that's all that they could have really changed. There's not much time to do a huge amount of setup work or to all of a sudden find a load of brake horsepower or anything like that. You know, maybe it is pure and simple. These are the more experienced and quicker drivers, perhaps.
In comparison to the field.
Yeah.
Because let's not also forget that Q1, the Pro-Am entries had the Pro drivers in, whereas this is the Am drivers in. And so those cars that were fast in Q1 would drop down, but Piana is a silver entry. In fact, all of those BMWs are silver entries. So they have 2 silver drivers. So in theory, their grading suggests that they are equal to each other. Tom Ensom, 44th position. McLaren was at the front. Alex Dennings just improved up to 3rd, so he's got himself a clear lap. Emson had his pole lap disallowed. Comes to the line now. It's not going to be a pole position, so he's used the best of tyre. It's only 19th. He can go again. He could almost get 2 laps again. But that is really not where that car could be, as we saw from the early part of this session.
The one that's slowest is another of the Alpines, Fabien Boeri, in number 317. There's a yellow flag in the middle sector of the lap, and it's dropped away now. So road is clear once again, so I'm having a brief moment. This is Philippe Gogolok, who takes over from Marc de Fulgencio in number 4 Mercedes. And Gogolok looking rapid as well as he comes up towards turn 13 approach now.
Good looking livery on that machine, run by BCMC Motorsport. Also Eastside, powered by Eastside, so it's actually the 2 cars in the Eastside awning, racing in the German Championship. Only 15th for Gogolok.
Goes through and continues that long drag down to turn 1. The reason the yellow flag was briefly out was because of a spin for the GPA Aston of Baudouin Detu. This is Max Kronberg, who took 2 class wins and 1 outright win amongst that at Hockenheim with Hendrick still. That car didn't really come alive, it didn't seem, in Q1, and Hendrick is the quicker of the 2. So Max Kronberg here, you can't necessarily expect to be at the front of the grid, but you might think he's due to be higher than 22nd. But he's not going to be, because he pits. And that's the end, with 2 3/4 minutes to go.
Well, Tom Emson's still on a lap in the 77 McLaren, faster in sectors 1 and 2 than he managed on the previous attempt. It is only 19th.
Michael Schrei there, looking on. So be a bit more content now that the car is the fastest. Engineers have a look at the data.
Don't think they should be worried. There's not many cars out on so there is a couple of NM Racing Mercedes I can see out there. Has Tom Emson improved? He has. He's gone up to 14th spot. So a better time from the 77 McLaren, but that car was on provisional pole. I know it was a provisional pole that was set with exceeding track limits, but surely it could be better than 14th in the hands of Tom Emerson. It's going to be an interesting one in race 2 for them then, considering also race 1 they're starting so high up.
So there, Nathan Sharp, winner at Hockenheim also, second in the times, coming to the pit lane. He won't finish the lap on the track, will he? That'll be another one in which he bails. Comes in.
Curiously, Villa Gomez in the 74 Aston Martin of Racing Spirit Le Mans did a 1.5 minute sector 1. So whether that is because he's just come out the pits, the timing doesn't suggest it. So he's almost as though he's had a moment, parked it up for a bit, and it's taken a while to get going again. But we didn't have a yellow flag there, and he's now in sector 2, so he's got going again. And the
session is being stopped. There's a car off the road at turn 1, we understand, and the session is being stopped. And that'll be the end. It won't be restarted with just over a minute to go. So a car off at the end of the pit straight, session red flagged, and that takes away the opportunity for anybody else to improve. But there weren't that many cars on the road anyway. The session, nobody was not being resumed.
Nobody was going fast.
And that's the reason for your red flag. Is that one of those Alpines that's off the road? It is, and you can see the witness marks. It's hit the wall on the far sides, and that was the car that was actually slowest in the session. I just mentioned Fabien Boeri, and he's ended up in the gravel.
Also did an extra lap after the checkered flag in yesterday's pre-qualifying session, having missed the flag instruction. Those cars looked very nervous under brakes.
Right, here you go. He hits the brakes and it'll spear off.
Wow.
Bang. And then into the gravel. But that's like a failure. Oh, tyre off, maybe a wheel even. But to suddenly pitch it sharp left like that, either a brake grabbed or something broke.
Yeah, as I was saying, you do see those cars really squirm under braking, under heavy braking, where the load goes onto the front wheels and comes off the rear wheels.
Yeah.
It's very useful to get the car to turn in fiddly go-kart track-like circuits, but when you're in a big sweeping turn one like that, yes, it's a big braking zone, but also turn one's quite fast. So it could just be that the rear end broke away from him.
Well, Fabian Boeri is okay, but for a car that's due to race at the end of the afternoon, there'd be a question mark over that, wouldn't there?
Yeah, there's a lot going on under the front of the car.
Yeah.
And it wasn't too much of an impact. He was unlucky, though, because it's where the barrier slightly opens. So it was more of an acute impact than you would have usually expected. So we lose a minute and 10 seconds, but as I say, nobody was on a lap, so I don't think it really hurt anyone. And that's it.
Indeed. So this is how we look at the end of Q2 then. Gabriele Piana is the fastest from Nathan Sharp and Alex Denning third from Simon Thurman, Berke Besler and Robert Consony. Matteo Villagomez next from Alban Varuti, Nikolai Moller-Madsen 9th, Luc Ibanez 10th, Christophe Amon next with a class pole position ahead of Jessica Beckman, and then Ruben Del Sart, Tom Emson from Pavel Lefterov, and then Philippe Gogolok. Etienne Shelley only 17th for Supra, going backwards on that effort in that session. And then next was number 48, which was Louis Merrick, sharing this weekend with Bailey Voisin. Next was Alain Ferté, ahead of the Allied Racing Jordan Wallace-driven Porsche. Jagish Gaidik only 21st from Max Kronberg, and then Hugo de Sadelier. Paolo Maloney was next, and then Sergio Pourlet behind him to be 25th. 26th, Jean-Bernard Beauvais from Greg Feisel, and then Marcus Lundstrass. 29th fastest, we had the Baudouin Detou Aston Martin from Lars Zayden Chevrolet. Joachim Bolting was 31st, Florent Grisot 32nd. 33rd was Jean-Luc Leandre, then Nicky Leutweiler and Taylor Hagler 35th. 26th, Alexander Weintraub from Lucas Meyer. Then 38th fastest was Guillermo Asso-Arjol in another of the NM Racing Mercedes. Charles Dawson next, a long way back, only 40th, Jean-Luc Boberly from Cyril Salai, and then Roderick Gion. 43rd was Pascal Hoffman, and I'm afraid the car that brought out the red flag was also the slowest of number 317, Fabian Boeri. Highlights then of Q2 for the GT4 European Series, with again a busy road, everybody venturing out on track to find not only clear track space if they could, but also to exploit that operating window of the Pirelli tyre. And the BMW is having a far better second session than they did in Q1 for whatever reason. Not quite so good. The Audis this time around struggling a little bit with Robert Consony. Berke Besler and Jagish Gaidik were going quickly. Besler lost a lap time and had to fight back, eventually getting fifth, but it was Gabriele Piana who was the quickest. Alex Denning's McLaren took third at the end. Nathan Sharp second. Gabriele Piana was the fastest. Race one is going to be at just after 4:30 from Ben and I. Thanks for now. We'll see you later.